Thanks for joining the show today. We have a really big show ahead. My very good friend and I think a true hero for the American Constitution, attorney David Schoen, who successfully represented President Trump in his impeachment trial before Congress. He gives us an inside look as to how he got the job to represent him, what happened behind the scenes. I mean, this is stuff you're not going to hear anywhere else, and why he was willing to risk everything as a civil rights and defense attorney who has fought for the Constitution so many times in his life in cases that maybe some of you can't even imagine. I'm just telling you that right now. He's going to tell you here on the show, on the Sara Carter Show. He will be with us. He's going to give us the detailed ins and outs of how he handled and why he accepted the job and successfully represented President Trump in the second impeachment hoax trial. We're also going to be talking about the border. Yes, this is a huge issue. I don't know if you all saw me on Sean Hannity's show this week on Fox News, but I was out in front of Nancy's wall. I call it Nancy's wall now, in front of the Capitol building, this massive fence line with razor wire on top. And we were talking to people here in the city, in Washington, D.C., just asking questions like, hey, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this 8-foot and, 10-foot wall with razor wire all around it and armed guards, National Guard troops, protecting our lawmakers while there's no they're stopping the building of the wall at the border, and they're reversing all of President Trump's border laws. So, and immigration laws. We have got to talk about this because we're seeing a surge at the border. I have some exclusive news on that I'm going to be sharing with you on the show as well. And also, this is... Bye-bye, Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head. We are going to miss you. You are no longer allowed to be a Mr. or a Mrs. You are now just a potato. And we'll be talking about what you meant to our childhood later in the show. I know, and this is a true story. Sad times we live in, folks. Sad times we live in. Listen, I want you to be a part of this show. I want to know what you're thinking. I want to hear your thoughts and invite the people that you want to hear most on the Sara Carter Show, because you're a part of this show. We're a family. Here we're going to talk like a family, right? It's going to be even more and more personal as I get on Facebook. We do Facebook Lives where I can answer your questions, bring guests on that you're interested in hearing, and maybe we can learn something, right, from one another. So please follow me on Twitter, follow me on Facebook, go to Rumble, go to Parler. Parler is back. You can find me on Parler at Sara Carter Official. You can get all these links at saracarter.com. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for the email list. You have to sign up for this email list because as they're censoring us, and believe me, they are. I have seen stories, that they don't want to go out to the public, just dip down, where people can't even hook onto the links to get to our website, or where they're not even shown at all. They're just shadow banned. You won't even know they're there. They look like they're there, but they're not really there. So please sign up for that email. And I promise you that I will keep you updated. I won't annoy you with emails, but I will keep you updated with all the latest, at least once a week, in your email box, you and I talking to one another and getting the story out there. On the Sara Carter Show, I talk to you a lot about censorship and what that means. And a lot of times as conservatives, we feel ostracized. We feel like we are being targeted on social media, out on the web, even in our schools, outside in public. It's insanity. But there's a lot of us out there. Remember, there is a lot of us out there. Over 74 million people voted in the last election for the other guy. So I want to talk a little bit about an organization that I believe in and one that actually represents your values. And that's the Association of Mature American Citizens. It is the fastest growing conservative 50-plus organization in America. It is fantastic. In just a few short years, over 2 million people have joined and now carry an AMAC membership card. Some of them are you. Thank you so much. Because when you join, they continue to sponsor us. Just kidding. They are a wonderful organization. AMAC offers an alternative to just about every benefit that AARP offers, but without the liberal agenda, folks. They do not have a liberal agenda. They're absolutely wonderful. They stand up for the Constitution and they fight against reckless government spending, against ever-expanding scope of the federal government for small businesses, your small businesses, and to secure our borders. And they aren't afraid to say it. Isn't that the kind of organization that you want to belong to? I stand with AMAC and I hope that you will too. I encourage you to join today at amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter. The benefits of membership are great, but the cause is even greater, folks. Join today at amac.us/Carter. Let's talk about that border, right? Border. So we know AMAC is willing to stand up. There are very few people, though, that are willing to stand up and tell you what's really going on at the border and how dangerous it really is. Not only for us as Americans, not only the national security ramifications of what's happening there, but what's happening to our partners in the South and what's happening as well to all of the migrants and young children that are being used as like ping pong balls in this political game. Right? With not a care in the world. Believe me, these lawmakers in Washington, D.C. that just want to perpetuate this bad behavior at the border by allowing it to remain open. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been to Guatemala numerous times. I spent a lot of time in Mexico. I've spent a lot of time on the U.S.-Mexico border, on the southern border. It's roughly about 2,000 miles. The terrain is incredibly vast and different from the border of Tijuana all the way to Matamoros, Texas. And I think you've seen that. We've got like a number of people being let into the United States now. A lot of them don't even have the appropriate identification. They haven't been vetted properly. They have not been adjudicated into the United States. And even when they are adjudicated, and that means they're going through immigration and customs enforcement questions, they're just being let in. We don't even know who some of these people are. And let me give you an example of that, right? Because a lot of times you hear stories, it's always about the poor families. And there are a lot of very poor, very sad families, people that are working alone, maybe traveling alone, people that have sent their children on their own into the United States. Some children which are just looking for their families and have not been able to see their mother or father in maybe 15 years. Sometimes their parents just leave them, just abandon them in their villages, maybe with family members. They come to the United States with the hope of finding a job. And you know what? After a while, time goes by and they've married somebody else or they've had children with someone else. And the children that are left behind in Honduras or Guatemala are left behind. Literally, I speak Spanish. I've talked to these children. I'm not just telling you this. I know. And some of them are different people when their parents see them again. Some of these kids are raised on the streets with gangs. They're with MS-13. They're unstable. They haven't had any education. They've probably never seen a doctor. And some of these children, when they're traveling alone, are traveling with people that are monsters. They're pedophiles. And some of the girls have been raped. We have to talk about these issues. But there's also the issue, and this is where I was going with this, of not knowing who the people are, right? Not being able to vet them. I wrote a big op-ed, an opinion piece. This is my second opinion piece at foxnews.com. On it, you go to foxnews.com, you look at my name, Sara Carter, you'll be able to pull it up. It's called Lethal Cartels Control the Border. They make billions on drugs trafficking while migrants suffer. But I want to talk to you about the billions of dollars that they make and how they do this. It's incredible the type of reach these monsters have. And they make it off the backs of those people that are suffering. And they kill them with impunity. They don't ever get held accountable. They find, in January, 19 people were actually discovered, slaughtered. January 22nd, 12 Mexican state police officers allegedly participated in the mass murder of 19 people. This included migrants from Guatemala. This isn't just about a drug fight, who were only miles away from the Texas border. Those smugglers, along with those migrants, were shot and burned beyond recognition. They were discovered like basically piled on top of one another in a charred pickup truck near Camarango, Mexico. It was near the Rio Grande Valley sector, right by the Rio Grande Valley River. It's unbelievable how horrific these scenes are. I've seen the pictures of them. I've seen what these drug cartels do. I've seen and talked to people who have barely escaped with their lives. It's almost like you're dealing with Islamic State. When people say to me, Sara, you were in the war zone, weren't you terrified? I said, yeah, I was always afraid. I was always afraid of an IED when I was in the war zone in Afghanistan. I was always afraid like maybe the Taliban would kidnap me. It's happened before. David Rhodes was kidnapped. He was the reporter for the New York Times. Sure. I always planned that out in my head. Like, what if that happened to me? How would I handle it? How would I get through it? Right. So I always thought about that. Is the story worth the risk? In Mexico, I was never as afraid in my life as I was when I would cross the border into Mexico covering the drug cartels. They operate with impunity. Oh, look at what that story. What did I just tell you? 12 Mexican state police officers. They were involved in this, allegedly. I spent time in Nuevo Laredo years back, and I knew that the police officers that I was traveling with on this story, that they were working according to my sources, they were basically like executioners for Los Zetas, which is this horrific cartel that operates in Nuevo Laredo. Former special forces, apparently they were trained here, and then they trained people in Mexico, and they were fighting Sinaloa cartel and other cartels that try to fight over those territories into the United States. You know why? So they could access our highways and bring their contraband, their drugs, their fentanyl now, and their meth, crystal meth, and everything else to our addicts, and to addict our young children and to kill our people. They bring it right on in. And you know what? It's not just Mexico and not the Mexican drug cartels and the Colombian cartels and the other cartels that are operating throughout South America. Hey, what about the fentanyl that the Chinese are doing? They're doing a lot. I'm going to be talking about that on this show coming up. And I wanted to tell you something that I exclusively have learned, and how the increase, and I'm actually going to be putting it out on SaraCarter.com. So I want you to go to my website because they may have it out by the time you hear this podcast. But I received a number of pictures of the migrant children in holding facilities. Now, remember, they were targeting President Trump all the time, saying Trump put kids in cages. That was total BS. Total BS. It's not true at all. It's not in that sense that you're thinking like they're in cages. The children had to be separated, but it actually started with President Obama. I was there in 2014 in the Rio Grande Valley sector when the children were pouring in, the unaccompanied minors, and President Obama didn't even know what to do with them. He was like, oh my gosh, we can't put all of these kids in a holding facility with adults or with people who have diseases. We have to separate the children. And there was just no space. They didn't know what to do. What do? You can't just say, oh, hey, kids, welcome to America. Good luck. See you down the road. These children have to go to hospitals. They have to be taken care of. They have to find their parents. A lot of them didn't have parents. You have Border Patrol agents that are supposed to be monitoring the border, and ICE officers that are supposed to be taking care of like what the drug dealers and the bad guys. And now they're like taking care of children. They're buying diapers. They're getting mothers milk over the counter. They're bringing in doctors. They're bringing in Tylenol. They are helping assist the children. They have to build these facilities. Look, it's difficult for everyone, but there's such a double standard. Biden, it's like a nice housing facility full of rainbows and butterflies. No, it's not. I'll show you the pictures on SaraCarter.com. You're going to be like, oh, wow, no difference. Then you got to find the children, and you got family units coming in. I've got friends at the border in Arizona, in California, in Texas that are just watching this flow, this increase as Biden opens up the doors for them. He's saying, look, I'm going to get you guys situated. We're going to have a new immigration policy. We're going to give everybody citizenship. That's all they are hearing, folks. That's all they are hearing. This is a danger to us. This is a danger to them. This is a danger to the world, frankly, because we're not even testing for the right things. And I'm talking the medical testing that needs to be done. I want you to listen to Jen Psaki here. This is Jen Psaki about kids in cages.
Is it kids in containers instead of kids in cages? What is the White House's description of this facility?
Well, let me give a broader description of what's happening here. We have a number of unaccompanied minors, children who are coming into the country without their families. What we are not doing, what the last administration did, was separate those kids. rip them from the arms of their parents at the border. We are not doing that. That is immoral, and that is not the approach of this administration.
Kids in cages. Kids in cages. And listen to her. Listen to her lie. I mean, they're playing games with you. These administrations, I think only President Trump, and I'm telling you this honestly, and I'm not saying it because I have any affinity towards Trump or not, but it was the only president that actually wanted to do something about it, that wanted to stop this human trafficking flow, what was going on. Bush administration, they didn't care. They were playing games with ping pong back and forth with all these migrants anyways. And Obama, same thing. Biden, same thing. This is the establishment. This is how they operate. This is what they do. And the result, the end result, is that bad policy leads to these really bad situations, folks. That's what happens. That's what happens. Bad policy leads to really dangerous situations, and we have to be willing to stand up and ask the right questions. I want to move on really quick because this is such a great story. And, you know, I focus in, and in fact, I am going to be talking to Luis Elizondo. We're working on a big project. You know, Luis Elizondo is somebody who I respect and somebody who I bring on who is breaking down that barrier. So you're not afraid, you know, to say, hey, you know, what's going on with this unidentified aerial phenomena or UFO phenomena, right? That's happening in the United States. Well, there was a story that was just published, and it was actually about American Airlines passenger jet that intercepted what they believed was a UFO. They couldn't explain it. So let me tell you this, because this is very exciting. This is a whole new report. This just happened. Fox News has it up. A lot of other news stations have it up as well. The FBI is aware of an American Airlines pilot's report of an apparent UFO seen soaring in the northwest of New Mexico in the northeast, New Mexico earlier this week, but stopped short of confirming whether or not an investigation is underway. Now, I sent an email to the FBI as well, received a response. But they don't want to the one question they don't want to answer is if there is an FBI team like now set up to investigate this. Because if the FBI is looking into this, I'm thinking they kind of got the X-Files team on it. I'm just asking, I'm asking questions. I'm not afraid to ask. Is there a team? Is that a specific team that's designated to investigate these aerial phenomena? Apparently, the pilot was maneuvering a plane bound for Phoenix, Arizona from Cincinnati, Ohio on Sunday afternoon when the flight crew spotted a quick-moving, unusual object flying above them, according to the radio transmission recorded by Steve Douglas on his blog, Deep Black Horizon. So we're going to give credit to him for this coming out. On Tuesday, the American Airlines confirmed to Fox News that the audio transmission was from their flight 2292, but referred all other questions at that time to the FBI. According to the pilots, and I can tell you what they said right here, we just had something go right over the top of us, the pilot adds. I hate to say this, but it looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile, describing what we have had on this show, people talking about on the show type of thing, moving really fast, and it went right over the top of us. And one point, the pilot said, we believe it's just above us. Like they believed it was actually hovering above. Now, I did call Lou Elizondo. I asked him about this. He said they were still investigating it. There could be a possibility that it may be something else, and that the pilots might not have recognized this, but they are currently investigating that. And as soon as we have any more information, I promise you, I will update you on it ASAP. I mean, because that's what we want to do on the show. We want to update you on everything that we've got going on here. Now, before I go any further, I want to talk to you. And this is before I get to David Schoen, because I'm not going to ask David Schoen about Tommy Johns, but I am going to talk to you about Tommy Johns. They are the best product for women and men as far as underwear is concerned. I mean, by far, the best, the most comfortable. You can't even tell you're even wearing Tommy Johns when you're wearing Tommy Johns. I mean, whether it's going out or exercising, whatever it is, you will be so happy if you just listen to me and get Tommy John's underwear. They are amazing. And they sell bras and they sell leggings and they sell just about everything. And Tommy John's has so much more. You know, there are some stains that never actually come out, like the 12 months of sweat and anxiety that your old sweatpants soaked right up. You know about that. Put the past on blast and feel instantly renewed with new Tommy John men's and women's loungewear. It's absolutely incredible. I am telling you, my Tommy John loungewear pants, I even wore them to Safeway because they are just so cute and they are so soft and so comfortable. I mean, you literally will want 2 or 3 pairs of these. They're so great. They are so great. It's the same level of comfort and innovation that goes into everything Tommy John makes, including over 13 million pairs. Think about that, of Tommy John underwear. Returns and exchanges are free. And right now you'll get 15% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/Carter, Carter. Don't forget to put that in because you'll get your discount. That's 15% off Tommy John loungewear, underwear, and bralettes at TommyJohn.com/Carter, Carter. Trust me, get them. You will love them. You will love them. You will write me and tell me how much you love them. TommyJohn.com/Carter. See their site for details. Now we're coming to David Schoen. He is a world-renowned civil rights and criminal defense attorney. Mr. Schoen is frequently a guest on Fox News. He is my great friend. He has law offices in New York and Alabama. He takes cases from all around the country and overseas. And as I said, he successfully and eloquently defended President Donald Trump before the Senate during the impeachment trial. And without any further delay, I'll bring him right on. David, I'm so excited for you to be here on the Sara Carter Show again. I know you've been incredibly busy and we haven't had a chance to actually talk or have you on the show to talk about your representation at the impeachment trial of President Trump and the incredible job you did. But I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you've done. And I want you to be able to explain to the audience, because in the intro, I told them about this. You know, you represented the Democrats. You're a civil libertarian. You're a civil rights lawyer. You're a criminal defense lawyer. And I don't think people know enough about you and about your background and the reasons why you decided to stand up and defend President Trump in what you believed to be a complete hoax impeachment trial. So let's just start with that. How did you meet Trump, first of all? How did this happen?
I had a call. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here. It's the best show out there, and it's a real pleasure for me to get to see you. Anyway,
thank you.
I got a call on a Sunday night about 4 weeks ago from Mark Meadows, then Chief of Staff, asking me out of the blue. I just finished dinner, and he asked whether I would consider representing the president in his impeachment trial. So I was really kind of taken aback. I'm just a little solo practitioner in Montgomery, Alabama. And so I was flattered and taken aback. And I said I would certainly consider it. We talked for a long time. And he said he would call me back the next day with the president. But about 2 hours later, the president called himself and recognized the voice right away. He didn't have to introduce himself. And again, we talked for a long time. And he asked me the same thing. We really got to know each other. And I said I would certainly consider it. I consider it a great honor to be called by the president of the United States under any circumstances. But in a second, I'll tell you why I think this case was even more than the usual circumstance. So we talked again on that Monday for a long time. I said I would consider it. Later in the week, I saw the name Butch Bowers out there, that they had hired him. So I thought it was over. And I sent a nice email, I think, to Mark Meadows saying, thanks for considering me. He said, actually, no, that was just one name that was leaked. We're going to get back to you. So they got back to me and they said they wanted me to quarterback that team. I wasn't sure they would go for it in South Carolina. They had about 5 lawyers on the team and they never heard of me. So I don't know why they would accept it, but they graciously did. The president actually called him up and told him that he wanted me to do the speaking during the course of the trial. They were very gracious about it, and we hit it off also, but they just didn't work out. So by that weekend, they were out. President asked me if I would take the case on just myself. We only had about a week and a half to prepare, and I said, absolutely not.
Oh, wait, you only had a week and a half to prepare.
At that point,
I don't think people realize this. This was, I remember this was a high stress moment because I called you during that time, and you're like, I only have a week.
Yeah, that's right. It was 8 days, actually, from that Monday after they were out. And so I said, it's just too big for me. You need to get somebody else to help me. So they had a recommendation from a fellow who works in the House. They brought in this other firm from Pennsylvania. And then we, prepared it together. And we had to write a brief first, and kind of a long brief, and then prepare the presentation. But as to, that's how I got into it. And I spoke to the president, I guess, from that point forward, maybe 2-3 times a day. He was as gracious as could be with me, just pumping me up, great confidence, he said he had in me, and made me feel very good about all that. But then the why, I suppose, is, first of all, because he was the president of the United States calling me up, and that was a great honor. But secondly, I honestly felt, as presumptuous as it sounds, that I was representing the Constitution in this case. I thought that this was a broadside attack on the integrity of the institution of the presidency, period. Dangerous, dangerous attack.
Do you believe they weaponized the impeachment process?
Absolutely. Political weaponization of the impeachment process, partisan purposes, partisan agenda. Remember, he was out of office by the time the trial happened. They had one goal: bar Donald Trump from ever running for public office again, and in fact, then disenfranchise at least 74 million voters who wanted to cast their vote for him. And in the future, probably more. I happen to think from the way this impeachment trial went, that Donald Trump has great momentum from this and would have many more than 74 million voters today. But listen, I do think from start to finish, this was what they call a snap impeachment. And for the first time ever, they spent really 0 days considering the impeachment in the House, took no evidence, heard from no witnesses. One of the Republicans complained at length, and I actually read from his the minutes of the debate, that this is a complete abandonment of their job, of their obligation to the people they represent, of any semblance of due process. And so it was really offensive. And then you come to the Senate, and that was really, one example I want to give you at the Senate that I don't think any American would recognize in any legal proceeding in which life or liberty is at stake. Patrick Leahy, Senator Leahy from Vermont, was the presiding officer. He was a judge in the case. He would decide what evidence would come in, what wouldn't come in, everything important in the case. He's a Democrat from Vermont. Fine person, I'm sure. Been in the Senate a long time. However, on January 13th, he
seemed a little bit off during that.
A little.
There were some moments I was a little bit worried, but then he did it. Yeah, he went ahead and he rolled through.
He did it because he had a parliamentarian telling him exactly every word to say. She'd stand up and whisper to what he was to say, and he would just repeat what she said. But he was very nice to me. He talked about how he appreciated my faith, and he's a person of faith, and so on. Anyway, so now he's presiding as the judge over this. Well, in this setting, he's also a juror with a vote. Well, on January 13th, he issued a press release. In that press release, he said, I'm going to vote to convict Donald Trump. This is the worst episodes in history, one of the worst episodes in history, and all of you have an obligation to vote to convict. 2 weeks later, January 27th, he signs an oath. It's an oath that's been around since the 1800s. And that oath swears under oath that he'll be an impartial juror in the case. Now, come on. After the press release in which he's already told us he's convicting without hearing any evidence, just the appearance of that, this swear an oath, is offensive. Any kid, let's say, who wants a civics lesson, watching this thing, it means you don't take the oath seriously, and it means you're prejudging a case. And now he's sitting as a juror who's going to cast a vote. That couldn't happen anyplace else. I said in my final remarks in the case,
that was absolutely a conflict of interest. I mean, it should have never happened.
Absolutely. So I stole one of the senator's lines. I said, if any of you out there are worried that this might ever happen to you, don't be, because you get more due process than this when you fight a parking ticket. And that's absolutely right, So.
I love that. I want to play a clip. This is you, and I want to get your take on it. This is during the impeachment trial, and I want you to comment on your own comments. Here, David.
Mr. Trump now faces a situation in which the presiding officer will serve as both judge, with all the powers that the rules endow him with, and juror with a vote. And beyond that, the presiding officer, although enjoying a lifelong honorable reputation, of course, has been Mr. Trump's vocal and adamant opponent throughout the Trump administration, and in fact, in the very matter on trial, the presiding officer respectfully already has publicly announced his fixed view before hearing any argument or evidence that Mr. Trump must be convicted on the article of impeachment before the Senate, and indeed that members in both parties have an obligation to vote to convict as well. Nowhere in this great country would any American, and certainly not this honorable presiding officer, consider this scenario to be consistent with any stretch of the American concept of due process and a fair trial, and certainly not even the appearance of either. By no stretch of the imagination could any fair-minded American be confident that a trial so conducted would or could be the fair trial promised by the leader. While most procedural aspects of a Senate impeachment trial may be non-justiciable political questions, this is not an excuse to ignore what law and precedent clearly require. The present situation either presents a violation of the constitutional text found in the articles mentioned above that require the Chief Justice to preside when the president is on trial, or it is a clear denial of due process and fair trial rights for private citizen Trump to face an impeachment trial so conducted by the Senate. The impeachment article should be treated as a nullity and dismissed based on the total lack of due process in the House.
I think that's a little bit of what you were talking about with me earlier, especially with Patrick Leahy. And you laid it out very clearly. And a lot of people that I spoke with said, David Schoen's arguments really are what took this impeachment across the finish line, that they weren't allowed to impeach him, that you were able to stop this. This was the second time they have tried to impeach President Trump. And just for everyone's clarity out there, so that you understand how David and I know each other, we met each other years ago when we were covering the special counsel and Robert Mueller and the investigation into President Trump. And we became good friends. We were actually introduced by a very close friend to both of us. I'll say her first name, Barbara. Love her. And we've been friends ever since. And we dealt with these issues. And even back then, I would say, David, this is a tough road to fight, because if you're a Democrat, and I'm not asking you to put yourself out there or say what political party you're with or whatever, but it's a political battle in Washington, D.C. And no one seems to care about the Constitution except for a few people that are willing to fight for civil liberties. And you were one of them.
I appreciate that very much. I'm not letting you get away with saying we're just friends, though. I happen to be her biggest fan among the American population, probably in the world. She's the greatest on television and radio. So I'll say that without any reservation, in every regard. She's the real deal. She's an investigative journalist who can also present at the highest levels. Now, having gotten that out of the way, I think that
I paid him.
there were real constitutional issues here. I have to tell you this, I was jaded going in. I don't know any senators or congressmen really, but so I expected the worst. I was so impressed with some of the Republican senators who I had an opportunity to interact with and their seriousness of purpose. I'll give you an example. Is Senator Mike Lee from Utah. I think some of them consider him to be a nerd. He's, first of all, a very fine guy personally, but I could see right away. But he was glued to the Constitution and to the rules here. And at one point, Jamie Raskin attributed a statement to him that simply wasn't true. And he stood up and he made a motion that it be stricken from the record. And he said, "How dare you quote me in a statement without ever consulting with me and asking me if I said it?" And he mentioned the rule. And this is where Senator Leahy got a little mixed up. But Senator Lee knew the rules. And so Raskin's only answer was, "Well, our source is the Washington Post. So I guess we'll have to withdraw it for now." That was their source. We did a whole bit. By the way, their sources for their so-called evidence in the trial of a president of the United States was reportedly, sources say, media says, and all of that. It's just absurd. You wouldn't put up with that. You would never bring a story forward if those were your sources.
Right, David, right. And this is what we dealt with for the last 4 years. This wasn't just even this impeachment, which was, I think, a culmination of years of hate to President Trump. And I always said this to people. Look, it doesn't matter whether you love him or hate him. It's about the Constitution. It's about the foundation of our nation, about our civil liberties and who we are as a people, and whether or not we are willing to fight for those civil liberties or whether we are willing to trample all of those civil liberties. And you're one of the few people out there that says, well, wait a minute. It doesn't matter if I'm a Democrat or a Republican. It doesn't matter if I like the guy or I don't like the guy. What matters is that we're following the rule of law. And that is what they failed on. And I want people to understand this. David has a very wide scope. He's very humble. He's not going to tell you how phenomenal he is as an attorney. There is a reason why President Trump and his team and Mark Meadows, who's a very smart man, selected David Schoen. And I cannot say I had anything to do with it. I didn't. He's just brilliant. He's a brilliant man. And, he has defended, you're a criminal defense attorney. You understand the law. You've stood up to the FBI. You've stood up to people like Andrew Weissman. And that's how we met. For everybody out there, remember Andrew Weissman was like Robert Mueller's pit bull, his right-hand guy in the whole investigation, special counsel, now debunked special counsel investigation into President Trump. And now we're seeing, but it's not over yet, David. It's not over yet. But before I get there, I want to talk about cancel culture, because two very interesting things happened to David with this trial. One, I believe, is your Jewish faith. became a big topic of conversation. It was just so bizarre. So I want you to explain that. Like people that didn't understand why you would put your hand over your head when you took a drink of water or, a request. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to explain to all of our listeners who may not be familiar with the Jewish faith, why you did so. And then the cancel culture, which is so crazy now. I mean, they're canceling Mr. Potato Head. We were joking about that, but Mr. Potato Head, you guys, is getting canceled. It's so ridiculous. I talked about it at the top where they don't want him to be Mr. anymore. He's just going to be a potato head. Much more seriously, though, it's people are getting canceled. People are literally being canceled if they do not follow the narrative that the mainstream media and certain people, I don't want to say Democrat or Republican, I want to say those in charge, those that can cancel, those in power that can really target people, they are doing so. And that's happened to you as well, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I consider in my case small potatoes because the issues in this case were too important so that, no matter what they tried to do to me, I think the issues were worth fighting for. But it is a kind of shocking phenomenon. So I'll talk about the cancel thing first. I've got 36 years of experience as a civil rights lawyer and a criminal defense lawyer. Good or bad, I've worked very hard in those fields. And according to the American Bar Association, my cases have done more to change public institutions in the South than any lawyer of the era.
And let's talk about that. Wait, I want you to explain that. What have your cases done? I want you to explain that so people know what you've done. I know you're humble, but I'm going to drag it out of you. And everybody, look him up on Google because it's amazing what he's done.
For example, the cases that mean a lot to me are I represent all the emotionally disturbed kids in foster care in Alabama and struck down the Alabama foster care system as unconstitutional. I filed the complaint that struck down the Alabama public education system as unconstitutional. I have them build, new prisons and jails and represent indigent defendants to change the way that poor people are treated in the criminal justice system. I do all sorts of things. I bring ballot access cases around the country for small parties, independent candidates. I did represent the Democratic Party. In the 2020 election, I represented a socialist candidate for president to get her on the ballot in D.C. But I don't believe in socialism. I represented the Ku Klux Klan in a march and masking case. I don't believe in them, and they hate me as bad as they hate anybody out there. But it's help every client fulfill the American dream to the best of my ability. So here I am, 2 weeks representing President Trump, which I consider to be an honor. So I don't even want to suggest, for example, that he ought to be an unpopular client. But for many people, he is. So I was hoping to teach a civil rights class at a prominent law school in the fall. When this thing came about, I knew it was going to be in the papers. So I contacted the dean to say, I want you to know this is coming. I don't know if that's going to be a problem. And he wrote back, very nice fellow, but he wrote back, well, actually it is. Many of the students and faculty would be uncomfortable having you on campus after this. So we're not going to be able to go forward with that. So 36 years of doing what they think, is God's work. All of a sudden, 2 weeks doing this, I'm someone who makes people uncomfortable. And then I belong to a listserv of very prominent civil rights lawyers. We exchange ideas all the time. It's helped me a great deal to find people. And it turns out that the president told me they spent 48 hours agonizing over this with the board about what to do about me. I had no idea. I, again, had volunteered to withdraw if it was going to make anyone feel awkward. She said ultimately they decided they had to dismiss me from the list. But they said it's a temporary suspension and I can appeal to be back on. I don't like the chances that I'm going to appeal to be back on. Any list that doesn't want me for those reasons, it's just not for me. It's funny. Alan Dershowitz, I know you know very well, and he's become a good friend of mine. But he was always a mentor growing up. And for one specific issue, if nothing else, but for many issues, but one specific issue was this idea of a lawyer's obligation to represent the underrepresented or the unpopular. I've done that my whole career. Now, in most of those cases, for example, I have 2 or 3 death penalty cases I keep a year, heinous crimes. I'm representing now as a favor to the Public Defender Service, a fellow who killed a woman and her 2 kids, and he was convicted, got the death penalty, trying to overturn it now. People say, oh my gosh, that's just great work down south, you should be applauded for that. But here you represent the president of the United States and you're a pariah. So that's an interesting phenomenon now. Now, that's not all the mail I got. More in the last 2-3 weeks, 95% of the mail has been supportive. Thank you for standing up for Donald Trump. Thank you for standing up for the Constitution. And then also getting into the religious thing. The religious thing I can touch on in a second. For me, religious practice has been a very personal thing. I don't talk about it much. I don't, whatever. I think religion is a personal matter generally. On the other hand, I happen to like watching some of these guys on TV who make it a broader matter, but I don't have that ability. Anyway, so in this case, I usually wear a yarmulke. Actually, I'm wearing one now. So
For everyone out there, if you watch on YouTube, you will see his yarmulke on the back of his head. Now he's going to explain.
Right.
Or Rumble, please, because YouTube is already, and I got to talk to you about that, demonetized me, but it was based on China, not even on President Trump, but that's a whole other story. So
I wear for me, I wear it to cover a bald spot, but no, I wear it for religious purposes because it signifies to me that there's always a God above us and that we answer to and that's watching, and that we are on earth to serve. Let's put it that way. Anyway, but I often take it off if I think it's going to be an issue for the client. So I wear it when I'm arguing a case in front of just a judge in, let's say, federal court. But in front of a jury, I take it off because people draw stereotypes. And I don't want them to hold it against my client. Here was the Senate. I don't know anything about these guys. So I decided not to wear it because sometimes people just focus on that and they can't see past it. So, and there are a lot of haters out there. Anyway, I decided not to wear it.
Sad, but
as
true.
I got up there, we had just 3 weeks earlier recovered from the COVID virus, my whole family just about. And so I was very thirsty. And so I took a drink of water and I realized I don't have my yarmulke on. I never take a drink or eat anything without having my yarmulke on, if I can help it, because again, it's thanking God for bringing the food or water. Water is something that makes the world go round, all of those things. I have to say a blessing before I eat or drink anything. I didn't have it, so I used my hand to cover it. I wasn't thinking there are television cameras on and all that. I was just like a guy in a room talking to people. And there was a break, and I took a glass of water and excused myself. So anyway, it went like viral. And so people were asking at first, kind of some mocking comments at first, but I don't do social media anymore at all because my kids don't want me to see like mean comments. But my kids follow it. They said,
your kids are so great, by the way. I just have to throw it out there. And David has this amazing family, this beautiful, beautiful family. I'm so excited to, even when I get a chance to talk to your daughter, I'm going to be so excited to talk to her because she's probably exactly as brilliant as David is, from what I gather. And you'd have gone through quite a bit. I don't want to bring up if you don't want me to, but okay, David, his whole family went through COVID, and as well as we did in December, but he lost his mother, and she was a remarkable woman and somebody who we talked about it, David, who absolutely loved you and was so proud of you and was proud of everything you have done and your defense of the president. It just broke my heart when I heard that, and when I heard that she passed on. But I wanted to give that opportunity so people can understand that you went and did all of this even after one of the worst moments in your life.
Yeah, worst moment in my life by far.
The worst moment in your life.
Yeah. So I'll say this, now that you brought up the family, because I think this is important for people to consider maybe when they face this kind of thing in the future. I made this impeachment trial a family project. When I took on this representation, I sat down all the kids in my family and we said, let's do this thing together. Let's study the constitutional provisions involved. Let's use it as a civics lesson. So I said, to me, the single most divisive period in our history was the Lincoln period. I think personally right now is second to that period. I think it's the only parallel. So I said, I'd like to find a speech by Lincoln that reflected those times. And I know Lincoln loved poetry. So I wanted to find a poet Lincoln loved who talked about what was happening at the time and the need for unity. So one of my daughters found those two things. And then we just buried ourselves in the First Amendment. I have stacks of books in my house on First Amendment. Each kid had an assignment. They went through the First Amendment, different writings on it, and put all of that together to kind of come up with a product that we had. Then I wrote my notes down, and they modified it, and they modernized it and that sort of thing. So it became a whole family project, and that meant a great deal to me. And one of my sons came with me to the trial, and he made some terrific contributions to it. So I think anybody, if you think about something having to do with American life or civics or something like that, the extent you can include your family, it's a great thing because, they're the future, frankly. So anyway, that was an important part of it to me.
Wow, David, I didn't know that. That's so incredible to me. I think we all should learn something from that. Really make our children a part of our lives, not like some separate entity that we have to, of course, we do our best with, but make them a part of what we're doing so that they can be excited about their future and believe that they can actually be a part of that great change. Now,
what they should know out there, if they don't already, is that you juggle 15 million things at one time and are still the world's greatest mother out there and the world's greatest reporter. So, but that's no easy task. I mean, you don't sleep much and you work around the clock. So.
Yeah, I do. And so do you. And it's not over either for President Trump. Every story today is that, has to do with Cy Vance and, they've subpoenaed, now the financial records, not only President Trump. Are they going to move forward with investigating his taxes? But now they're subpoenaing all the financial records related to Steve Bannon. This New York prosecutor is going after them. And as he's going after President Trump, what is going on here? I mean, you and I have talked about this before, David, but it's a nonstop hatred. It's like they want to ensure that anyone connected to Trump, anyone in his circumference, what are they protecting? Why are they so afraid of him and the people around him? I have my own suspicions, but it's almost unbelievable. It's almost like Moby Dick, right? Yeah. It's Ahab going down with the whale. It's like, we're not going to stop until we destroy him.
Yeah.
But what are they really destroying?
Yeah, you said afraid. I think fear is a big factor. They know that he may come back stronger than ever this time. That scares them. He's just not the regular politician. He's not one of them. He came to town to get rid of them, draining the swamp, that sort of thing. But it's been nonstop, as you know, from covering the Mueller thing from the start. And look at, by the way, the things he accomplished, notwithstanding Mueller and notwithstanding the media, paralyzing his administration, the First Step Act, incredible move in history, the Middle East peace, Jerusalem embassy, making NATO stand up and pay their fair share. But look, you're right. I mean, I worry about what's happening in New York, maybe even in DC, because these are jurisdictions in which they can marshal support from AOC and that whole hate squad group and so on. And it's a no-brainer for a guy like Cyrus Vance, the political animal. But I think they make a big mistake. At some point, the American people are going to say, stop. You have to have some agenda in your lives, Democrats or whoever, other than attacking Donald Trump. If you have some legislative initiative, you have something positive to contribute to the country, do it. It's going to backfire to continue going after him. Anyway.
Well, thank you. I know you got to run. I've kept you way longer than I should have. Pleasure. David, thank you so much for being with me today. And I hope you come back on the Sara Carter Show. I love having you on, and I'll be talking to you throughout the week, I'm sure.
Great to see you. Thank you so much.
Great to see you too, David. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Didn't I tell you David Schoen would be fantastic? I mean, anybody who has him as a lawyer is absolutely knows they are going to be protected, that this man is going to defend them, that he is going to fight for their rights. And he taught me so much and has taught me so much about law and the Constitution and what it means to fight for our rights and for our civil liberties. And that is so important, people, in a time where we feel like everything is being trampled, where our Constitution isn't meaning much to our government, where our rights are being trampled, where we feel like we can't even ask a question, or this crazy cancel culture. I promise you, I will be bringing David back on. I think it's important, and maybe he could give you all some advice. I mean, let's talk to him. Let's find out. Let's get some legal expertise here. That might be kind of a neat thing to bring to the Sara Carter Show. And so remember, we read all of your reviews and everything. So let me know what you would like as far as the show, and I'll be sure to do that. But I want you to understand too that cybercrime is something that we're dealing with. And since we've been on lockdown, it's actually increased by 75%. And by far, it's the most serious cybercrime is deals with home title theft. I was stunned when I found this out. I was stunned. My home is now with Title Lock. Here's how the criminals do it. The title documents to our homes are online now. They're at home. They don't have anything to do. They're just surfing through all of these websites. These thieves find your home's title, and then they forge your signature on a quick claim deed stating that you sold your home to them, right? They take out the loan on your home, and then they leave you in debt. You won't know until the payment is late or you have an eviction notice on your door. Can you even imagine what that feels like, seeing an eviction notice on your door? I can't even imagine that. Insurance doesn't cover you. Didn't know that either. And neither do common identity theft programs. So they won't cover you either. That's why I protect my home with Title Lock. Guys, you have to have home title lock. The instant home title lock detects someone tampering with your home's title. They will help you shut it down. They will stop it right away. Go to HometitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim. Then use code RADIO, RADIO, to receive 30 free days of protection. That's code RADIO, RADIO, at HometitleLock.com. That's HometitleLock.com. Another thing they need to lock is Joe Biden's nuclear codes. Literally, according to like 3 dozen, it's like 3 dozen eggs, 3 dozen Democrats, right? They're like, hey, we need to, do something different here. Now, look, Joe Biden, who was put into office by all of those people who hate Trump. I have no idea why. I mean, President Biden, we all know that there's some stuff going on there. Right? Some stuff going on there. If I say what I think I'm going to, want to say, I will probably be banned from YouTube or something like that. But there's some issues. There's some issues. I don't think there's any problem with the nuclear codes because I don't think he can really memorize them. And by the way, he would have to have them written down somewhere, and then he probably wouldn't even be able to find the paper. I do that quite often. And I don't have all the issues Biden has with his memory. So, but it's good to know that 3 dozen Democrats, like 3 dozen cookies, or 3 dozen potato heads, actually believe that this should be spread out so that not one person has the authority to launch our nukes, weapons of mass destruction, and destroy the entire planet. That just sounds so crazy, right? That just sounds so nuts. Look, no president is just going to do that. They can't just go into the office with a big red button and whack, the bombs are off. It's not a movie. It's not going to happen that way. The president is the commander-in-chief, however. They are the commander-in-chief, and the final decision lies with the president. So if the whole world is going to be blown up and we are going to be radiated, it would, lie with the world leaders, right? We just got to blame them. I say no more nukes. Just put Biden in a cage with like Putin or whoever and let them duke it out. I'm like old school that way. Let them duke it out and we'll see, what happens. We don't want to be blown up at all, ever. But that was a very interesting and funny story. That's my opinion on it. Let's just keep it that way. But I don't want to end this show without talking about the potato heads again, because I can't seem to get over what's happening in our society. I can't seem to get over, the fact that the Associated Press wrote an entire story about Hasbro and the potato heads. I can't get over it. I just can't fathom it. I thought it was an Onion story. Remember the Onion? Or, like my favorite, the Babylon Bee. I thought it was a joke. No, apparently it's really offensive to some people that there is a Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. I was a kid. I would make my potato heads, they would date, they would go out, they would hang out together, they would have a family. I don't understand this. I don't understand where our society is going with this. There are men and there are women. It's okay. I love being a woman. It's okay. If somebody else doesn't love being a woman, okay, right? I'm not going to make you be anything you don't want to be. But where does this end? Where does this all end? Our children need some direction. They feel comfortable, right? Don't you feel comfortable when someone gives you some direction when you were a kid? Imagine if everything was just neutral, when you're a kid and you're already confused enough as it is. If your parents don't give you any direction, if your name is, Symbol instead of, Sara or Jenny or, Marie or Scott or Tom, it's so infuriating. It's so infuriating that we are making our children's lives so much worse, so much harder than they need to be. You're only a kid once. Time goes by really fast. Let your children be children. Life is confusing enough. Stop trying to make them more confused. We have never seen so many children depressed and sad and frustrated and with I'm just going to say it, with the craziest parents I've ever seen in the history of histories. They exist right now. It's just insanity. Please don't name your kid Tree and Apple. No, I'm just joking. Name them whatever you want. I'm a libertarian that way, but just let them be children, right? Just let them be children. I want to play a quick clip right here. And this is Joe Biden. And I really want you to hear this. And then we're going to wrap it up.
I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure.
Just play that one more time. This is the best clip ever.
I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure.
I love Steve Carell. So nobody understands what the heck Biden is saying there. But like the media won't do anything. They won't say, excuse me, Mr. President, what the heck were you saying? Because we have no idea. There is like no clue there. I don't understand it. Are you speaking in a new language? Is there something going on there? They don't even ask the questions that they asked. Remember with Trump? Remember when they were like, everybody in the media, NBC, Washington Post, New York Times, we need to get a therapist in there. We need to check Trump's brain. We think something's wrong. We're going to, invoke the 25th on him. And we had Rod Rosenstein and others planning to spy on him because he was completely crazy. And he wasn't. But that's what they were saying. That's what they wanted the public to believe. Here we actually have someone who we can't even ask a question. We don't even ask any questions. We're just like supposed to accept that. Folks, this is the world's greatest gaslighting. Remember, what you see, what you hear, that's real. Don't let them tell you it's not. It is exactly what you are seeing and hearing. Don't question these things. There is no gray space in the blah, 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 blah. Thank you for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. I am so happy you were here today. Remember, leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Spreaker. If you need to find me on social media, just go to SaraACarter.com. SaraACarter.com. That is our website. We don't want to be censored. If you get to SaraACarter.com, sign up for my email list. If you sign up for the email list, you will have our stories, our podcasts, and all of the latest news every single week in your mailbox, an email between me and you. And I work on these myself. Also, Facebook. I'll be doing Facebook Lives. Follow me there on Facebook. Get over to Facebook and like me there. It's Sara A. Carter on Facebook, Twitter as well, and Instagram. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. Here we are taking the story back. God bless you, and God bless our beautiful nation. Our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. Mike created the new Giza Dream bed sheets. They're amazing. I use them. I love them. You will receive 2 for one low price plus free shipping. Call 1-800-685-7221. Use the promo code Carter.
Hi, it's Dana Lash, host of The Dana Show. Every day, I'm here to keep you up to speed on the most important stories and info that you need to know in your very busy life. And if you're always on the go and you want to stay connected, just download our daily podcast and take it with you. It's a great way to get up to speed on what you need to know and what legacy media may not be telling you. Visit danaradio.com and click on the podcast link or subscribe at iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.